LawFlip, objection, your honor.
Turn the game upside down.
LawFlip, objection, your honor.
Turn the game upside down.
Okay, welcome to LawFlip. It's a conversation about all things law, life, social media, doing things that lawyers are not supposed to be doing, including being happy. So I'm Benjy Smith. We talk a lot about not being miserable and not conforming to traditional lawyer roles. This guest definitely does not operate traditionally. So he's self-described as a lawyer, satirist, accidental provocateur, MBA commenter guy, spinner of yarns. He graduated from Cornell undergrad, law school from UCLA, and is a corporate transactional attorney. We're pleased to welcome Matt Bilinsky. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's flip the game upside down. So I heard you on one of my favorite podcasts, Group Chat, with our friend D. Murthy, Drama, on
sure.
and some folks on there had no idea that you were even an attorney. And so I thought we would give folks the opportunity to hear about your actual law practice and what you think about being a lawyer. And so you grew up in LA, right?
I did.
And then you went to the famous Beverly Hills High School.
Yeah.
And then you went to undergrad at Cornell, and then you went to law school at UCLA?
Yes.
Okay. And so what type of law practice do you have?
It's corporate transactional, which it is fairly nebulous. That encompasses so much. I don't really have an industry specialization, which obviously I can get into what the pluses and minuses of that are. My clients range from digital media and e-com startups to representing influencers and people in the online world who are doing brand deals and starting companies off their persona and their platforms, to basic retail businesses like fitness studios, some restaurants and bars, a lot of, no one really calls it a practice area, but like executive employment, people
Sure.
who are taking, I'm leaving my VP job at X company to go take a COO job at this new startup, and I'm taking equity, and those deals get complicated. So that's a lot of work I do. Stuff that's a lot in the apparel and merchandise space, a lot of both sides of the aisle in terms of both influencers building merchandise brands off their platforms and the partners who build those brands with them.
Cool. And then you bill by the hour, correct?
75% of the time.
When you're not billing by the hour, how do you bill?
If there's a small project, I can find some way to do a confined project, a flat fee of some sort. One composition I'm looking at a lot more these days is a mix of hourly and some equity. And that's pretty fluid. There's no, people are figuring that out as they go along right now. As lawyers are obviously realizing, why the hell am I limiting myself and working with clients that are high risk, high reward, and might as well be along for the ride with them.
Yeah, and like I billed by the hour for a long time. I don't now. I'm wondering, does it bum you out at all to tie your time to money, or have you become comfortable with that?
Well, when it's too tied to money, it's terrible. And that's why I never went to a firm that I knew I was going to have to spend 6-7 years or even longer doing that, where it's just you're purely a function of how much time you put in and time you bill. That was never, there was no chance I was ever going to fit in that environment. I didn't want it, and it didn't want me. So yeah. So I don't, hey, some of us have the angst around it that, okay, wait a second, I'm limiting myself here. And maybe back in the 80s and 90s, when we were an overall lower growth environment and lawyers billing a high hourly rate were beating inflation and towards the higher end of the income chain, and all of a sudden a lot of people start shooting past them in the 2000s and 2010s, and then a lot of lawyers are like, God damn it, what the hell, I can only bill so many hours, like I can't keep up with everybody.
Yeah. And then you seem very comfortable with controversy. Why did you stay away from litigation?
Too many rules, too many deadlines, too many. Yeah. I mean, it's the controversy is only the fight. That's the only piece of it. Everything else is incredibly structured. You've got to observe this protocol with the judge in the courtroom. The motion's got to read like this. I mean, if there's a couple things formatting, if a little format's off in a contract, nobody dies.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And so that leads me to, so we don't, whether we like to generalize or not, I'm curious your take. Generalized lawyers, where do we get it wrong? Where do lawyers get it wrong?
By putting the concerns and the priorities of the lawyer above the concerns and priorities of the client, which are usually about risk management and overemphasizing the importance of things that the client doesn't find important. People don't one thing that I've learned is that I don't think lawyers understand just how much even really successful business people are still looking to them to tell them what's important and what's not and what's risky and what's not. So there's something that you may think is important, and if you speak about it to the client like it's important, they're going to think it's important. But if you really explained it to them and they really understood what the gravity of this term was in the scope of the deal, they wouldn't give a shit. Okay?
Right.
So you just spent all this time, put all created all this friction in the negotiation over something the client doesn't care about. Okay?
And what about just on a daily living basis? Where do lawyers get it wrong?
They don't understand how to grow businesses. They don't understand the nature of how a business scales. They have no idea.
And where do you think lawyers get it right? Let me rephrase it. How can lawyers get it right in terms of how to operate on a day-to-day basis, be happy, get something out of their profession?
Well, that's a lot. All right.
How do you? If you're happy in your practice, how do you do it?
I mean, I think the key piece is that you've got to be able to get your own clients. I mean, that's it, man. If you're servicing somebody else's clients, your life is far less enjoyable than if you're able to get the client. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and say it. That's 80% of it right there.
I want to say 95.
Honestly, I was being conservative.
Yeah.
It's 95%.
I think that's what I tell young people all the time. I'm like, if you don't, because a lot of people just push that aspect off. They put that like, hey, let me just get my bearings here and I'll figure out the business later. No, figure out the business now and everything else will get figured out. You are just a highly paid robot until you have your own business. That's my take on it. And so to that point, how do you think law schools, and I kind of have an idea of where you're going to go with this, have done in terms of preparing lawyers to go into the real world?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it's a total waste of time. They're terrible. They're absolutely terrible. They're miserable places. They don't teach any discernible skill. They don't even teach the law well.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, they're completely and utterly outdated.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason. What the hell is that third year doing there? Why? If you can do the MBA in 3 years, if you can do the MBA in 2 years, why do you need 3 years for a JD? Yeah. I mean, even to go past the bar, it's not that helpful.
Right. You know? I agree.
And then there's you don't learn any skill at all that's translatable to, I mean, maybe there are a handful of classes. Maybe I chose a few of the upper level, second and third year classes. I didn't choose as wisely as I should have, that I could have learned more in, but I didn't learn a whole hell of a lot.
I think we're speaking to like the legacy aspect of this business. So like the law school doesn't prepare you to practice law. And then even most firms, they're not looking to have you become a great business person or a great lawyer. They're looking to have you service a very specific skill set. So, and they're not looking for you to become content creators and build your own business. They want you to
listen, now some are.
Right. Now it's coming around. So to that point, you've become a content creator. I put out content. Was there any hesitation from your side in putting out content, being different when you service a lot of sort of traditional corporations, businesses who might look down upon that type of thing?
I mean, there's always incremental and situational. But now, I mean, you know, my natural inclination was always to be fairly outspoken publicly and on the internet, and even probably not just more than most lawyers, more than just most people. And, you know, I'm sure it has limited me in some ways, and then it's accelerated me in other ways. So sure. You do it. You do it, and then you see if there's any consequence, and then there's no consequence, and then you do more, and then you see if there's more consequence, and then you keep on doing it. And then eventually it's I don't know, it's like Tom Hanks trying to get off the island in what the hell is it? In Castaway.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, there's probably a better analogy for it, but if you keep doing it and you keep on seeing what the consequences are and what the consequences aren't, and yeah, the one job that I had that was a job that was a subsidiary of a major media corporation, for a little while I was worried. And, is someone going to see this? But I never got, HR never came knocking on my door. Most of the people I knew who I worked with, who saw my online activity and my content were just kind of enjoyed it. And they're like, all right, this is a little out of the box, but, and they figured that it was controversial, but I never got a call from someone who was above me or from human resources and complained about it. And then I get an even more aggressive, a couple outright online controversies of people emailing some of my colleagues like, what an asshole. And they're like, listen, Matt, try to chill out, use your best judgment. We know you're a good guy. So I've tested the waters, and thus far I have not had whatever consequences there are, I've been willing to live with. There's a couple of friends of mine who said, yeah, listen, dude, I'm just going to tell you, just so you're aware, I recommended you to a friend, and then they saw some of your online content, what you were doing online, and they're like, this is not the type of person I want. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't care. Right. Hey, listen, maybe if I was sitting there with no clients starving, I'd be like, oh, I got to change.
Right.
And maybe it's lost me a few clients here and there, but it hasn't lost me enough to not do well. So do the math.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then do you get frustrated? Like a lot of times people come to me like, dude, do you even practice law? Do you have time to practice law? And it's like, my answer to that generally is like, you spend so much of your time just being a loser, and you're asking me if I have time to do something while, what's your take on when people say that to you? What's your take?
Dude, I'm on the computer all day, okay? It's 14 hours I'm staring at a goddamn computer with my hands on a keyboard. How much do you think it takes me to go dust off a reply to some idiot on Facebook or construct a tweet or check out something on the internet? This is not a huge, I'm sure it's a time suck when I want it to be, but it's not that big a time suck. It's not like I just was raising a freaking barn and stopped the barn raise to go hop on the computer and do some content.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of haters, but it just, from my experience, it's generally people who are not happy with their life who talk, who basically talk like that, because we're just exploring these new opportunities, and I have gotten so much business just from being willing to just put myself out there.
Beyond, absolutely, okay, because they're and this is another thing with lawyers. You've got everything as its own consolidated unit, of this client, this billable hour, this project, okay? The only way to escape that and create a long tail of value, there are only a few ways, and that's content's one. Equity in content is really it. What
thought process do you put in putting out content? Like how much of it is genuine? This is how I 100% feel. How much of it is stirring up? Because you definitely have a little bit of the I want to stir some up type thing.
Yeah,
so,
listen, it hasn't all been consistent. It's definitely been fluid over the course of my 15 years throwing flames on the internet. In my 20s, it was probably just me being immature to a certain extent. Then, in my early 30s, it was probably pulling the reins back a little bit and thinking I had to hold back. And then maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know, I got a bout of inspiration to start being more outspoken, and it started going very well, but I wasn't fully outspoken. And then I even pulled back a little bit. I was like, oh man, maybe this is not what I should be doing. What the hell am I doing? And there was a bit of a course correction there. And then maybe the last year I've just said, okay. And then also the environmental conditions that I believe that just societally we've become far too hesitant, far too dishonest, and people are self-censoring way too much. And yeah, I've probably been more aggressive in trying to break through that and set an example that, no, this is not the right. You take it as you will if you think I'm being grandiose about my place in society, but no, I am trying to set an example that we need to stop pulling punches and holding back, and this legislated self-censoring and politeness faux politeness is not serving anyone's interests.
And people say that you're polarizing. What, like, are you polarizing, and if so, why?
I guess I am. Like, I don't always think so. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I'm not polarizing because I hand it out all 360 degrees. And I mean, this is not just me speculating. I've legit, like, some people DM me is like, you know something, Matt, I can trust you because you on my side, but you also on the other side, both very aggressively. And I was like, that's how I know I can trust you. I'm like, hey, I'll take it. So listen, not everyone who sees that is going to have that level, that sophisticated of a reaction to that. They're going to see if I say something aggressive about something they believe in, and they're going to get offended, and they're not going to be like, wait a second. He said something that I really disagree with, but he said something else that I really agree with. So clearly he's not got an agenda here. He's just, this is what he thinks.
Sure. And then, okay, that brings me to the COVID crisis. You got all sorts of opinions on the COVID crisis.
I do.
Or the corona crisis, if we listen to D and not use the word COVID. You're super passionate about it. What's some information that our audience may not know about that you want to share? Just relatively briefly.
Oh, dear God, that's a lot.
Pick one.
I just think, I think that it feels like a lot of people are trying to draw this line that on the one side, you have more liberal leaning, Democrat oriented people who want to extend lockdowns, who are overestimating the risk of this virus and don't care about, the economic devastation, and that's it. And then on the other side, you've got the kind of freedom, the freedom rally. I'm not wearing a mask. This was all a hoax. We got to reopen American society, and that there's that dichotomy, and that's clearly something like that is active, but I don't think it tells nearly the entire picture. I think first off, there's an entire on the right. I know an entire sector of the right, particularly, who even before Donald Trump kind of found religion on how dangerous this was. Like, guys, stop with this whole "it's the flu" thing. Okay, this is ridiculous. Okay, even at the lowest barrier, this is 5 times as deadly as the flu. It's leaving people with permanent lung damage, and this is something that we need to be taken seriously. And don't give me a break that we're going to be sitting here watching the entire world. It's not just America. The entire world shut down and took these steps in response to this. Just stop it. And a lot of these people on the right, while they're taking it very seriously, and there's a lot of people on the left who are nobody's trying to necessarily become these doomsdayers, right? I mean, Jared Polis, a really good example of what I'm describing is this. And another thing to think that you're going to get better and more accurate information and perspective the more localized you look at things these days. Okay, so a professional group that I was kicking the tires on, seeing if I'm going to join, they had a Zoom call back to back. Jared Polis, Democrat governor, Colorado; Doug Ducey, Republican governor of Arizona, and the founder of Cold Stone Creamery. Anyways, so I go listen to these two guys, and they're not that far apart. They're pretty much saying the same thing. I mean, sure, Ducey, the Republicans, a little more, we got to open responsibly, we're going to open up, and yada, yada, yada. And Jared Polis is being a little more hesitant, but I mean, I'm not seeing a massive gap here between the two. And
I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my boy Jared Polis. His sister is engaged to my brother-in-law, so that's crazy. That's crazy that you brought him up. But
yeah,
so
nice.
Yeah, no, I think keep going. Sorry.
No, so I just stop giving into this the divide that's been created, that you just expect everyone on one side to think one thing and everyone on the other side to think this other thing. It's just that those are the loudest people. Okay?
Absolutely.
So, and even Ducey even mentioned it. He's like, listen, you see a lot of fighting on the national level between Republicans and Democrats. He's like, from a governorship perspective, we all get along.
Right.
I like Jared Polis. We get along. We try to coordinate, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I don't, if you want to paint everyone on the quote unquote other side with a certain brush, just no, it's just that you're seeing the loudest, most obnoxious version of people on that side. And Speaking of loud and obnoxious, we have Donald Trump. And so I
as lawyers, the arguments that we make today oftentimes are directly against the arguments that we made last week for a different client.
Sure.
I'm curious, because you have an opinion about everything and you're pretty good at advocating. If you had to put your Donald Trump MAGA 2020 hat on, what's the best argument for why Trump should be the president 2020?
That his worldview has been validated by this coronavirus. So, okay, this is going to be interesting. The coronavirus validated Donald Trump's worldview, reestablishing strong borders, being fiercely opposing China as the first existential threat to American hegemony in probably 30, 40 years. And that we need someone who, regardless of their personal qualities, is a fighter who's going to reestablish, who's going to put America first and reestablish America's sovereignty as a singular unit, as opposed to just another participant in the globe, in the global network. And that that right now is not the time for growth stifling liberal redistribution. And because Donald Trump, and something that people don't give him a ton of credit for, is deviated from a traditional Republican orthodoxy on maintaining some sort of safety net, what we need is strong borders, decouple from China aggressively, not kind of decouple from China, but decouple from China aggressively. And that's the number one. That is an existential number one priority. The Democrats don't take it seriously. Donald Trump is the first politician of either party in a generation who's shown that he takes China seriously. And so we have to ride that horse, particularly in response to what just happened.
Okay, counselor, please present your argument for Joe Biden 2020.
Sure thing. Donald Trump, many of the criticisms of Donald Trump are accurate but overstated, except for one. He is a walking tail risk. Because of the way that he operates, not taking a lot of things seriously and being very boomer bust New York real estate developer, when something goes wrong, it's going to go very wrong. And we saw that right here with the COVID virus, where he was completely unprepared. He spoke irresponsibly. The federal response has been poorly coordinated. And he's, in fact, encouraged a lot of Americans and his followers to not take this as seriously as he should, even though, we kept on waiting for the true risk of Donald Trump to materialize. It didn't materialize with North Korea. It didn't materialize with the Russia thing. It didn't materialize with the Iran situation earlier this year. It finally materialized with the coronavirus. We can't have a guy that communicates this poorly, that has such low character, and is just so immature steering the ship during a time like this.
Good arguments on both sides. We'll let the audience decide. Okay, so we have law students that are coming out in this brutal time. What advice do you have for law students coming out of law school right now?
I mean, try to...
It's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know if there are any larger firm situations that aren't miserable, right? I hear that there might be.
I don't either. I'm not aware. Even the ones that I hear people say, like, no, it's a good vibe over there. Like, that's just my take.
From where I'm standing, go find a firm that's small. Find the best combination of small yet credible, where you make a little less money. You have only maybe one person above you as opposed to four. And you start learning skills about client management as well as how to actually do the legal work. And then try to compress the timeline until you can start gathering your own clients. And okay. That's it. That's it.
That's good advice. So now we're on to deal of the week. Matt, what is your deal of the week?
If we're talking deal and tip and way to approach life right now, you got, obviously, everyone's circulating information right now. Everyone's circulating articles, tweets, videos, whatnot. You got to read past the headline, guys. I'm telling you, I know how media companies work. I've been studying it for years. I also know people who work at media companies. They construct the headlines for different purposes than they construct the articles, okay?
Just to give some insight, like let's give an example of clickbait. What is clickbait, and what should everybody know about what a media company's intentions are with a headline?
Okay, all right, I'll explain this, and this might be I'm going to post on this eventually. 2013, a guy who is now the tech writer for the New York Times, Farhad Manjoo, who now I think is a complete idiot, but he's done good work over the years. He did really good work, and he wrote a piece for Slate called "You Will Not Read This," and it was about how this is scientifically proven, this is measured, this is what the data says. Online published content that everyone reads the headline, then as you keep on going down the article is attrition. Less people read, less people read, less people read each paragraph. Media companies are not stupid. Billions of dollars are at stake based on this data. They know what people read and what people don't, and what incentivizes and triggers people to share stuff, which is what gets more clicks. So they are going to sensationalize the headline to make the headline as appealing as possible, or as sensational or as serious as possible, and then the article gives all the detail. And this is not like it used to be with written newspapers, with printed newspapers, because the distinction between the headline and the article was never as broad.
Sure,
it just wasn't. So, for instance, they know the word Trump gets shares and gets clicks, so they will find a way to get Donald Trump into that headline, even if he has minimal relevance to the headline. The one that I think is going to be studied in master classes for generations is Tuesday's incident with the Los Angeles Times constructing a headline off a comment from LA Public Health Director Barbara Ferrer that suggested that LA was continuing its current lockdown rules for 3 months or through July. Yeah. Wasn't what it said. Mayor Garcetti's had to go on 4 press conferences to clarify this. It's become a whole controversy. I will spare you the story about how.
No, we're gonna direct people to check out. We'll give you your information. You can get the follow up to this point. We'll give you a little bit of clickbait on our own, and send you over to Matt Bilinsky's social media. So, okay, my deal of the week is ask for help. So a lot of us, particularly lawyers, let ego get in the way of asking for help from others. And like, if you're a fan of this LawFlip, you'll notice that I'm super positive and hopeful, but it takes a whole team of friends, therapists, people, trusted advisors to really get to this place. And I just want to say that like asking for help from people that I trust and respect has been incredibly helpful to me. And so I advise you to do the same. Now we're on to Legal Tip of the Week. It's presented by my firm, Smith & Benowitz. We do employment, class actions, and personal injury. Matt Bilinsky, give us your legal tip of the week.
It's around force majeure right now. Obviously, force majeure is, if you're looking for a term, probably other than COVID or Corona, one of the terms that has elevated into the top of the public lexicon, at least in the business world, over the past 6 weeks, is force majeure, which is essentially a proxy term for an act of God. It's in just about every contract that okay, if something outside the reasonable control of both parties occurs, a war, fire, governmental order, something that was nobody's fault and prevents one party's performance, that party is excused of performance. So obviously, in response to a pandemic where people are not able to perform due to the circumstances or perhaps governmental order, this is coming into play all over the place. Okay, so entering into new transactions now and new contracts, you have to be careful for force majeure, not just to make sure that it covers the ground you want it to cover, but you have to establish, since we're entering into the contract during a period of force majeure, you have to establish whether or not current conditions qualify. Because here's an example. I do a lot of branded content, branded campaign deals for influencers, right? Let's say that a brand hires my client to do a deal and there's a force majeure clause that says either party is excused performance if they can't due to force majeure. Theoretically, a brand could 2 weeks from now, before the client's supposed to perform, just say, something, we're not into this anymore. Oh, look, we're under force majeure, and just claim force majeure because we're under the umbrella of COVID, right? So you want to throw something in there that says, the parties acknowledge that the conditions as they exist as of the day of this contract do not constitute force majeure, and some additional material detriment or adverse condition has to come into the scenario. For instance, if there's a client and their supply chain takes a hit beyond what is going on as of the day of the contract, okay, that's force majeure. But you can't simply enter into the contract and then claim force majeure under the same conditions as you entered into.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I think what you highlighted there is don't be an idiot and actually hire an attorney, because you shouldn't be dealing with this on your own.
This is way too nuanced for a lay person. Even attorneys don't know this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. So, and then my legal tip of the week is, if you're going back to work and you have concerns about your well-being or safety, you have all sorts of options. There's all sorts of protections for you. Contact an attorney. Let it be us if you can. Here we are. We're going to close it out. So what did we learn today, Matt? We learned that you can advocate for two sides of a position very well, Matt. You did a good job.
Thank you.
We learned that you have to have chutzpah and put yourself out there online, despite what the quote-unquote haters have to say, and that you have to read behind a headline. And we really appreciate your time and your guidance that you gave us on today's episode. I think people will get some entertainment and value here, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Do you have any? Tell us where we could find you online, and any parting words.
Yeah, for sure. You can, find me online, Twitter, Instagram, at Matt Bilinsky, MattBilinsky. One thing I've been doing on Instagram is, my pseudo makeshift launched a news network right out of my living room off Instagram. And I chop up a lot of information around the COVID situation on my story and on my profile and do some Instagram lives. I've had a lot of great interviews with people from, whether journalists, doctors, people in the social sciences, sports writers, athletes, and I'll be having more. So check those out. As we discussed, I'm completely technically inept, which is why it took me 6 weeks to get someone to translate those to a YouTube channel. It is kind of tongue-in-cheek referred to as BNN, the Bilinsky News Network. So I'll be posting on directing people to the YouTube channel. And parting words here. Just if you know what you're good at, emphasize what you're good at, pursue what you're good at. If you're finding out, you get momentum and you make progress by doing things that you do well, that you can get recognized at as doing well, even if it doesn't necessarily show that, even if there's not a one-to-one benefit right off the bat. So try to aim towards the stuff that you're good at, that people recognize you're good at, and build on that. And that's the best advice I can give to people right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. We really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much, Matt.
No problem, my man. Thanks so much.
LawFlip, objection, Your Honor.
Turn the game upside down.
LawFlip, objection, Your Honor.
Turn the game upside down.
Okay, so Ariane, they're asking where they could find us. So for LawFlip, it's at LawFlip and LawFlip.com. For Smith & Benowitz, our law firm, which does personal injury, employment, and class actions, you can find us at Smith Benowitz and SmithBenowitz.com. For the personal stuff, like where you're really going to find the juicy stuff, at Benjy Smith and BenjySmith.com. At Wages Guru and LewisBenowitz.com for Lewis. Oh, so LawFlip is produced, directed, and edited by the young legend Ariane Tabibi, and visual effects and compositions by another young legend, Oren Azad. Intro music provided by Pen Practice. Pen Practice, what is it? Premium instrumentals for upcoming artists by the music industry's top producers. For more info, visit penpracticemusic.com. I had so much fun recording the intro song with my man Hilton Deuce Wright. Looking forward to hearing more and more from Pen Practice. So the LawFlip identity, this hot logo that you're looking at, created by Garrett Whiston and Travis Nagel. Special thank you to Shai and Seth from the Horwitz Marketing Agency. A huge thank you to Aaron and Vanessa from Smith & Benowitz for endlessly dealing with all of our podcast bullshit. And lastly, a huge thank you to our beautiful wives, Julie and Lisa, for supporting our vision.
and all the love to all of our 4 boys combined. Disclaimer, this podcast is made available by Smith & Benowitz for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is only intended to provide general information and opinions about legal and other concepts, and is not intended to be used as a source of legal advice or relied on for legal advice. By listening to this podcast, you understand that no attorney-client relationship is being formed between you and Smith & Benowitz or any of its attorneys. This podcast should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a licensed professional attorney in your state.